Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome to this month's Agile Central Community webcast. My name is Caitlin Lamb and I work on the product marketing team. I just want to preface with a few things. So today's topic is called Agile for Happy Organizations. We will be recording this session and the replay will be available on the Agile Central community after this webcast. We will be having an interactive Q&A at the end, so please stay at the end and ask any questions you may have. I want to introduce our speaker today, Longda Yin. He has been working with large organizations for about 10 years, helping them transform the way they ideate, create, and deliver software. Longda's education includes a master's degree in mechanical engineering from Cornell University, along with SAFe program consultant and certified Scrum product owner certifications. Longda's passion for helping organizations thrive provides the backdrop for today's webinar. He is one of the many transformation consultants at CA who suggests measuring employee happiness prior to the start of an Agile transformation, and also many times throughout to understand the emotional impact Agile has on your organization's overall happiness. And I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks a lot, Caitlin. I appreciate that. As she said, I am one of many principal transformation consultants, but no other principal transformation consultant leans on a brick wall like I do. So I have an agenda here, and I want to talk a little bit about happiness and performance. We'll go into a section titled Agile Does What? We'll have closing comments and also a QA portion. The actual presentation, I think, is going to be around 30 minutes, and I want to leave plenty of time for QA. I will talk about topics in terms of the happiness and performance and also what Agile does to get a conversation started. I think that when I've had this type of presentation before, a lot of people felt like the Q&A was really the valuable part. I want to leave plenty of time for you to be able to interact and get the conversation started using the presentation material as kind of a starter, much like a user story. So earlier in 2016, I wrote a paper, and it was entitled Agile for Speed, Productivity, and also Happiness. The information there talked a little bit about what Agile did, and this was reinforced by a Tech Beacon survey. And we had some numbers around what happened, the correlation between happiness and performance. And that was organizations that describe themselves as happy, with employees that describe themselves as happy, reported 180% more energized, being 108% more engaged, and 50% more motivated. Now I want to break this up a little bit because engaged and motivated are two words that have gotten a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention lately. So many of us know about Dan Pink, and I think he's done a really great job making people aware of the pretty robust literature around motivation and engagement. Now what he's done is he said that there are different types of motivations and engagements. There are extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. Extrinsic motivators are kind of your carrot and stick motivators. They're your classical, if you do this, then you'll get this. You make these numbers, you'll get this bonus and hit the commission. You don't do that, maybe there's something punitive. It turns out the assertion is that we should move away from those types of extrinsic motivators for long-term and healthy motivation. I still think that there are tactical uses for extrinsic motivators, for carrot and stick. I'm not saying that they're not effective. I'm saying that intrinsic motivators, those around giving a purpose, mastery, and autonomy to people, are better for long-term sustained motivation. Now, purpose being letting people understand what it is they're working on, mastery being giving them an opportunity to develop their technical proficiency and cultivate their ability to do something, and also giving them autonomy, which means I'm giving you the space and freedom to practice your mastery and head toward that purpose. Why am I talking about motivation and engagement? Well, for some people, motivation and engaged employees are happy employees. I think that there is a correlation and I think that there's some effect that motivation and engagement has toward happiness. I do not think that they are completely tied together. I think it's a complex relationship that happiness has with motivation and engagement. The reason I say that is because I've seen instances where people who are otherwise motivated and engaged get burnt out and would explicitly say that they are not happy. Furthermore, I've been in instances where purpose, mastery, and autonomy weren't levers that I could really control or affect. What I mean by that is there are instances where there are security concerns, clearance concerns, or confidentiality reasons where I'm not able to really give and clarify the purpose to the satisfaction of the employees. I can't communicate the purpose in a way that really motivates or engages employees. And there are some things that, while important, they're rather transactional, and they don't require a lot of technical proficiency, and there's not a lot of room to develop technical proficiency. So I wasn't able to use mastery as a way to motivate and engage employees. And yet, there are other times where, because of safety reasons, I'm not able to give the autonomy that maybe some of the knowledge workers or some of the people in the organization would want. So already I'm saying that there's a complicated relationship between engaged, motivated employees and happy employees. Further, there are instances where maybe I'm not able to use purpose, mastery, and autonomy. What then? Right? What am I left with now? Am I just not able to motivate them? Is happiness just out of my reach? And I don't think so. I think that I've taken a look at happiness in and of itself and say, if it is not directly or just encompassed within engagement and happiness, if it's not happiness equals engagement and motivation, what is happiness? What results in happiness? So I have a manager friend of mine, and she has stated that she likes to gauge happiness from her workers based upon whether or not these employees of hers have friends at work or are friends with each other. So she says, I have these employees, do they like going to work? And I know if they like going to work, and I know if they're happy, if they are a lot of friends between these employees or between these employees and other employees in the organization. Also, when I think about friendship, I get into relationships, right? And relationships in my life, as they've manifested throughout from childhood down up to adulthood. So, I mean, we have, as a people, have constantly explored relationships. It's central to our lives. Ever since there has been more than one person on this planet Earth. Ever since we first started getting put into preschool and working with other kids and having to wait in line together and work on assignments together, projects together, and be in the same environment, we've explored relationships. And it turns out that I think, from my personal experience and also professional experience, that happiness comes from good and healthy relationships. Now, these relationships can be, there's a lot of different types of relationships. And what I'm talking about are relationships that you would find in the workplace, good and healthy work time relationships. And it turns out these relationships are pretty well understood. How to create a good and healthy relationship is based upon some well-documented psychiatric principles. Now, I've listed them here. And on the other side, I've said there are some things that Agile does. Now, Agile can mean a lot of different things, right? Agile is often used as a way to describe a methodology. Perhaps it's a framework, or it's a mindset. But in all of its pretty much all of its manifestations, and I'm kind of hedging because the world of Agile is pretty broad. But in most of its manifestations, it delivers work with a purpose. It values people over processes. It promotes collaboration. It responds to change. It emphasizes feedback and learning. Now, if I take a look at the things that Agile does, I note that they are very strongly correlated, if not identical, to the principles which result in good and healthy relationships. I guess what I'm saying is Agile cultivates good and healthy relationships. Cultivating good and healthy professional relationships is very Agile. And that is the primary way that I think Agile results in happiness. Now, Agile delivers work with purpose, values people over processes, promotes collaboration, responds to change, emphasizes feedback and learning. If those are going to lead to relationships, and relationships are going to lead to happiness, I want to delve into these specific outcomes that Agile results in. So, you're asking me, Agile does what? Well, Agile delivers work with a purpose. Earlier we mentioned that purpose is important because it's paramount, it's critical to engage and motivating them, to engaging and motivating employees the way they really should be engaged and motivated. I'm also asserting that purpose does something entirely different for happiness as well. And when I'm talking about purpose, I mentioned that purpose often wasn't a lever that I really had access to. I couldn't give purpose to people. There have been more times, however, when a purpose just wasn't communicated effectively enough to the employees. Purpose is more than just a well-crafted email with a few pictures that I send out routinely to my employees. Purpose, helping people understand purpose or feel like they're delivering work with a purpose, is more than getting people together at a town hall once a year and talking at them. What I'm showing here on the screen is a PI planning, one of the key ceremonies prescribed by the Scaled Agile framework, PI planning being program increment planning. Now, we're taking purpose seriously here, and we're saying there's got to be some sort of agenda, and there's got to be some sort of help and guideline around how to create a purpose. And it turns out I want to cultivate the work, and then I want to bring people together in the same room so I'm able to talk to them about the work that I want to do and give them the opportunity to co-create the purpose, to think about the purpose, to criticize it, to change it, and then I want them to explicitly agree to the purpose. And I also want to do this regularly. I want to have this happen. It turns out once a quarter seems to be a good number to shoot for. So it's not enough to give people the purpose. When I'm delivering work with a purpose, it means I think purpose is valuable enough that I want to have people come together and rally around that sort of thing. And it's not easy. It doesn't just happen. I need to have a way to prepare for the big ceremony, and then I want to have an agenda that details out what should be in how this type of ceremony should be conducted so that I can be effective and efficient with my time together and be able to have it be effective so I can continue to do it. So there are other organizations and there are other frameworks out there that talk about getting alignment and co-creating a purpose. The Scaled Agile framework is one that I wanted to call out specifically here. Also, Agile prioritizes people over processes. And this is the recognition that in my organization, it's the people that are really delivering the value. They are doing the work that is valuable to my stakeholders and also to my customers. I create processes to help them. I create processes to protect them and give them guidelines. But the processes, in and of themselves, are not valuable. The processes need to serve the people. The people shouldn't be beaten down to serve the process. Now, one of the great things that I think is everywhere in the Agile world is the concept of having a process that allows the people to change the process. A process for the people to change the process. This idea of being able to look back and see how things are going so that we can better ourselves is prevalent in pretty much any Agile framework or methodology. It's commonly referred to as a retrospective. And I think the Agile community has done a great job getting better and better at having a retrospective. A retrospective is not just Caitlin and I getting together at the end of a project, lamenting over how tough it was and being frustrated with it, and then, at least we made it through, and going to happy hour, and then forgetting about this project and moving on to the next. It's not putting something to rest and forgetting about it and learning nothing. It is taking the time to look at how things are going, how the process is working, so that I can improve it, and doing it early enough so that these improvements still have time to affect my work. An example of how this type of retrospective is the sailboat model. So retrospectives are so important that there's a huge library on how we can visualize or how we can think about the process to put people in the right mindset to be constructive and change it. The sailboat model is, has three different parts. What I'm asking is for people to think about wind in their sails, on how there are certain things and certain aspects of a process. It may not be limited to process actually, but in this case, we'll focus on how the process is moving me forward or helping me get things done. It could be anchors, where I'm saying, what are some things that feel like they're weighing me down, preventing me from getting work done? And then there's also paradise, which is, let's pretend like there are no restrictions. Where do I want to end up? How do I want to be working? What would be the perfect process? And it turns out that moving away from just what's good and what's bad, or pluses and minuses, a different type of visualization is necessary to kind of unlock and motivate people to think about their work in a different way and to make it constructive and have these types of retrospectives often enough that I'm able to change the process because I really value the people's opinions. Agile also responds to change. I want to take some time here to be very clear about the respond part. A lot of times people will use react as a synonym to respond, but there are some important differences. So in the background, what I have here is, I think it's a poster that was designed to advertise or let people know about the Home Alone movie, Home Alone. I'm going to use the plot of Home Alone to describe the differences between react and respond. If you haven't seen Home Alone, well, first, I really think you should see Home Alone, right? I think it's a great movie. It's been out for a long time. You should go see Home Alone. I'm going to give some spoilers, so maybe, mute me for the next 3 minutes if you don't want any spoilers. But even if you know these spoilers, it's still a good movie. So the plot of Home Alone. Kevin, the protagonist, wakes up one morning and he finds that his family has left. They've gone to vacation. They woke up and they were late to get on the plane. They scrambled to get on the plane to get to vacation, and then they realized while they're on the plane that they left Kevin at home, alone. Kevin is home alone. And when he wakes up and he finds this out, he freaks out. He runs around, he reacts to this. He's screaming, he's running in circles, he's yelling. It's unfortunate. Now, the story of the Home Alone movie is that Kevin has to grow. He has to mature. He learns how to go buy groceries. He learns to tie shoes. He develops to a point where, at the end of the movie, he is able to respond. So 2 burglars are going to break into Kevin's house, and they're going to steal all his family stuff. And upon learning this, Kevin does not react. He doesn't run around screaming. He takes the time, and he responds. He sets a series of booby traps, and he catches these burglars and reports them to the police. So a lot of times we'll use react as a kind of involuntary response, and we'll keep doing that because we feel like reacting is faster than responding, even though responding might be the appropriate and measured way of handling change. To that end, the Cynefin framework is there to help me. Now, for a lot of people, when I say Agile, you're thinking of iterations, you're thinking of daily stand-ups, you're thinking of user stories, and for sure, those are a big part of Agile. But there's more to the world of Agile than just iteration, being iterative and talking a lot with each other. I encourage you to explore it. What I'm showing you here is the Cynefin framework. Stay until the QA, and I'll even tell you how to spell Cynefin. It's Welsh. But the Cynefin framework helps me describe and understand what type of problem I'm dealing with so that I can more quickly and effectively respond to it. There are simple, complicated, complex, and chaotic problems. And that's important to know because if I have a simple response to a complex problem, I'm not going to solve everything that I need to solve. If I have a complex response to a simple problem, it's going to obfuscate the things and also not take care of things the way I want them to, or not solve the problem. So using this framework, I'm able to better understand what type of problem I have and then understand what type of response should be applied to that problem. And as I get better at this and as I'm better at categorizing and practicing the response mechanism, I move away from reacting and into responding. And so change is not a source of terror or frustration for me. Agile also promotes collaboration. Collaboration is often contrasted with negotiation. The difference in my mind is negotiation would be Caitlin and I sitting across the table from each other, treating each other as a problem. Collaboration is Caitlin and I sitting on the same side of the table, treating the problem as the problem. Collaboration doesn't necessarily just happen. There are many different types of mechanisms and ceremonies that we have to promote collaboration. One of the most iconic is a daily stand-up. A daily stand-up is one of the ceremonies that the Scrum framework prescribes. Now, Scrum is great in helping me understand in a team, what is the composition of this team, what is kind of the recommended size of this team, and how often should this team get together and talk so that they collaborate more with each other. One of the ceremonies is that daily stand-up. And the daily stand-up is a way for me to better empathize with my team and give me ideas on how we can all help each other out. Now, Scrum is very popular and a lot of people have used the daily stand-up. And unfortunately, there's been some misuse of the daily stand-up as well. Now, I'm completely on board with you taking something that's prescribed and making it your own if you understand the value and you're still getting the value behind it. In this instance, I'm showing a picture of people having a ceremony calling it daily stand-up, but they're not even standing up. I think that's okay. They've decided together that getting around in a circle and doing planks is a better way for them to empathize with each other so that they know how to help each other. It also keeps it very short and gets blood flowing in the morning. The bottom line is helping them collaborate. A daily stand-up is not a status meeting. It's not an opportunity for a project manager to get everybody together and have them give him a status update. It also shouldn't drag out for very long. To that end, if you have a daily stand-up and it lasts more than 4 hours, contact your nearest Agile professional immediately. Agile also emphasizes feedback and learning. So there's change where we are responding to change, but then there's using mechanisms, there's using numbers and being objective about that change so that we can get better at responding to that change. And we pick up and we have a way to quantify that change as feedback and use it for learning. How do we do that? Well, there's many different ways of getting feedback and learning, but I really like the Kanban system thinking method to help me understand, to walk me through how I should get that feedback and what I should do with it. Kanban is a framework that says start with understanding what's happening and be honest with yourself about what's happening. And then visualize it some way. What I'm showing here is a Kanban board. Kanban board is a way for me to say, these are the different states that my work goes through for me to add value to it to a point where I can give it to a customer. And then I also want to visualize the work in those states. Now when I have my states and I have the work in those states, I can see how that work flows through. And then what I want to do is I want to make changes to that system and observe what those changes do. A very common way of doing that is through WIP limits or work in progress. So I'm saying there's a certain number of work items that I want in every state, and by changing that, I'm going to affect my throughput. And then when I change it some more, it's going to additionally affect my throughput. That is a systematic way of understanding how WIP limits are going to adjust my throughput. I can take that feedback and use it in learning. And so I can do a number of really great things with it. One, I can figure out what I should change in my state to really improve throughput, and that's not always an easy question. And two, I'm able to say, where do I want to create my bottlenecks? Because in any system, there's always going to be a bottleneck. And the question is, where do I have that bottleneck? And you want to design your system such that the bottlenecks happen in places where you can control them. All right, so Agile does what? Agile values people over processes. Agile delivers work with a purpose. Agile responds to change. Agile promotes collaboration. Agile values feedback and learning. By implementing those and in an organization, I'm saying that that's going to help build relationships. And those relationships are what are going to lead to a happy organization. And happiness has positive benefits that are different from just focusing on getting engaged and motivated employees. So that was just a brief overview. And there's more to how Agile values people over processes, delivers work with a purpose, responds to change. In fact, there's going to be a part 2 that I want to talk about specifically with regards to purpose. And I want to be a little bit more detailed. But this was just to get things started and give you the opportunity to ask some questions, and also give me the opportunity to spell out Kneffin.
Great, thanks Longda. That was an excellent presentation. I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be having some time for Q&A right now, so if you have any questions, feel free to input them in the Q&A chat to the right of your screen. I know I already had a couple questions come through privately that we'll address soon, but for any of you on the phone or watching this replay who have attended community webcasts in the past, you'll notice that we've typically focused more on the product side and specific feature usage, whether it's presentations from our pre-sales team or product management team, and you'll notice that this presentation is a little bit different, which is a good thing. And Longda, I want to thank you for taking the time to share a little bit more about interpersonal relationships and how they manifest and exist in the workplace, because working with Agile principles and frameworks is more than just, using a product or tool. It's, how you use your products and tools, but also how you interact with your fellow teammates to reach a common goal. So I think that's really important, and thank you for sharing. So we do have a couple questions that came through. The first one is, how do you spell Cynefin? It's the first time I've heard that word or framework before.
Cynefin. It's C-Y-N-E-F-I-N. C-Y-N-E-F-I-N. And I'm going to be honest with you. If you said that word to me and you gave and you're like, Longda, spell this word correctly, or you lose your job. I would be out on LinkedIn right now looking for connections, because there's not a chance I could spell I would think C-Y-N-E-F-I-N makes the Cynefin sound, but it's Welsh, and you put that into Google and you get really cool results, and it'll talk to you about an area of Agile that not a lot of people associate with Agile. As I said before, the Agile well goes pretty deep, right? It's a mindset, it's a practice, it's a framework, and I encourage you to dive in and see how deep that well is, because there's a lot of learning, and I think it's really cool, and it's all very helpful.
Awesome. And also we have some more questions. Have you ever leveraged traditional survey capabilities to determine if Agile practices have contributed to fostering a happier culture among employees?
Yeah, I have. So, there are different ways of, and what I'm kind of assuming is, sending out surveys and saying, are you happy, right? That's kind of the easiest way. And if you have that type of relationship with your employees, you can do that. You can say, they are very frank and upfront with me. I asked them if they're happy, and they said no. Then, well, that they're not happy, right? But there's a lot of times where you may not feel comfortable asking your employees that. You may not feel comfortable asking the organization that. Maybe because they don't feel you're not confident of the results. To that end, you may choose to observe. What I mentioned earlier is, do you feel like people have friends at work? Are there a lot of people? Is there a strong friend network at your organization, at your company? And that is, there's a concrete link between people who have friends at work and their happiness with their workplace. Further, there are other ways to maybe determine somebody's happiness. Because what I'm just asserting here is, understanding the purpose helps with happiness. So if you ask things like, what is our purpose? Do you agree with it? Do you feel like you could change it if you wanted to? That understanding of self-efficacy, if they're not able or willing, if they don't feel like they can change their purpose, or they don't really know it and they don't really care, that's then maybe the purpose aspect isn't really helping building relationships. If you're not really using that to build relationships, maybe relationships aren't being built. And if relationships aren't being built, then I would worry about if people are happy working with you, happy working at that organization. So, you could ask them directly, or you could have surveys and say, ask them questions that lead to or are strongly correlated with relationships, and then infer whether or not they're happy. And you can collect that information a couple different ways. It could be through a survey, it can be through your one-on-ones, and it could be observation at your organization.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And from a team member perspective, something that I've noticed that's helped foster, collaboration and camaraderie on our teams is just setting up one-on-ones with people in different functions. Like, you never know what you can learn from people in different functions of your organization. Maybe you'll discover new ways to make connections and work on projects together, and I think that's really important, just to establish those relationships so you have a better understanding of your teammates' work. What has been your aha moment during your career in which you realized that practicing Agile is the secret to a happy organization?
Not to sound too cheesy, but like one of the reasons why I've stayed with Rally and now CA is because when I first came to this organization, I really liked working for Rally. I like working for CA. One of the reasons why that sticks out to me is because when I got here, I had some work friends, and we would go hang out, we would go ski and snowboard together, and I started to have friends at work. And this was, I had just come out of college into the workforce. I didn't know what to expect from the workforce. So having that type of friendship was different for me, and it made a tremendous impact. And I didn't make the connection because I'm like, oh, I'm happy here because I have good and healthy professional relationships with people. And that's really cool. And I thought about it and I asked about it, and there were enough data points where I started to feel comfortable about my hypothesis. And one of the reasons why, one of the things that Rally prided itself on was being born from Agile. Agile was in its DNA. It kind of started a lot of the market on Agile project management or Agile thoughts or incorporating Agile into almost everything. So that's kind of when I started to realize that Agile, it's not the only way to happiness. I'm going to go ahead and say, I might get in trouble for this, I don't think it's the only way to happiness, right? Happiness it's elusive, it's complicated at our workplace. I'm not saying if you're not Agile, you can't be happy, but I do think that Agile is a great way to happiness. Presuming, you take Agile to be not just, being iterative and writing user stories, right? It's more than that.
Awesome. So I see we have a bunch of questions coming through the Q&A, both publicly and privately. So if we don't get to all your questions today, don't worry. We have your email address, and Longda will follow up with you separately, but we'll just answer a few more questions that we have. How about this one? What if the feedback you're getting from teammates is to just leave them alone and stop bothering them about Agile? Have you ever encountered this before?
Yeah, I think that's kind of funny. It's like, listen, I'm happy, just leave me alone. And I don't think Agile has to be intrusive. And a little bit of why is important here, right? Like, I think it's important to understand why you're doing Agile, or why you're incorporating Agile, or why you're adopting the Agile mindset, right? Any of those things, however you want to, whatever it means to you. Like, why have you taken the time to go down this road of change? What are you trying to get? And a lot of kind of a trivial example to kind of get us started is, I want my organization to be more predictable. And that's why I'm using Agile, the Agile methodology. That's why I'm incorporating Agile principles, because I want to be more predictable. Well, then that gives you something to talk about with this individual who's like, stop bothering me about Agile. Well, if this person is, predictable, then maybe that I need to take a look at myself, because they are doing what I'm asking them to do, and they're being predictable. And so maybe when I'm bothering about Agile, I'm actually valuing the process over this person. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated than that, right? Because maybe I'm saying I need to be more predictable, so I need to bother you about Agile, because while, Mr. Curmudgeon, you are predictable, if you don't follow this process, you make other people less predictable. And that's why you have to care about Agile. So, I would kind of start there and say, I don't want to just bother this person because I want them to follow this new process. That is against what, I don't think that's right.
getting down to the why and helping them understand that they're doing things that help other people. I think that is a better discussion. I would also ask if this person is happy or not, right? Like, if they're like, hey, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to try this new process. I want to figure out why they feel like they don't want to change.
Yeah, it really takes a village, doesn't it?
It does.
And also having those kind of internal, champions of understanding, the new process helps as well.
Yeah. And, what I'm starting to see more and more, and this may not always be the case, but it's enough the case that I'm willing to say it on this webinar, your value as a knowledge worker in the software world, and I think even in most companies, your value is not just your ability to do your work. It's no longer that. Your value is defined by your ability to do your work and how you can help other people do work, right? And the reason is it takes a village to get things out the door and make the customer happy or do things for a business stakeholder. Like, we can't do it alone anymore. And so, the value that you provide is also about how you help teammates. And I think that we need to, come to terms with that.
Great, and we have a question about, we have a couple questions about people and process. So Jackie asked, you mentioned a process to allow the people to change the process. Can you give an example of how this might be done in a large organization with the top-down processes?
So the process that I mentioned was a retrospective, and there's a lot of different frameworks that have this type of retrospective. In a large organization, I would say we need to adopt some Agile principles, right? And that is promoting collaboration and being clear about purpose and realizing that I can't just tell people what the purpose is for them to really buy in and believe in the purpose. So I've got to decentralize a few things. And I need to have that conversation first. Now, if I start to have that decentralization and I start to help people understand that I do truly value collaboration, that makes changing the process a lot easier just because we've started to collaborate more. Now, I never want to, I also want to give an alternative, which is maybe this is a very top-down organization and they need some safety. They're saying, okay, we're going to change the process, but it's got to be orderly. Well, there are other aspects of the Scale Agile framework that go into detail on how to have an inspection and an adaptation at a program level. It details it out in terms of, it details it out and how you should have that type of inspection adaptation with that many people. It's very clear about your outcomes and what you should do, and it's pretty clear on what you need to do in order to have a prepare to have a successful inspection adaptation. So that's kind of where I want to talk about it more for sure. But that's where my mind initially goes to when I see that question being, can you give an example of how this might be done in a large organization with top-down processes?
Okay, and I think we're going to answer one more question live on the webinar today. Andrew asked, I sense that there's a tension in people over process. How do you motivate others who have bad processes to utilize good ones while still knowing that they are valued?
Okay, I'm going to, if I don't get this right and I answer it poorly, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to do that. Here's my initial stab at this, right, which is I understand this question to mean, yeah, we have a broken process, but, maybe you got to suck it up and you got to do it anyway because that's just the way life is, right? Like, you're important, but, we have these, processes that are just so difficult to change. You are so valuable. You are very important. I need you, but, can you just get over it? Can you do this, one little annoying thing, right? maybe there are expenses or something like that. Maybe there's a process for expensing expenses, or maybe there's some legacy thing that I can't be, that my company can't change, and I need my employees to be compliant on. And to that, I would say, if you even make a little bit of change and it's steady and constant, people are more okay with that than feeling like they're just being. If you want your employees to be okay with that, I think you should find ways to show them that you're consistently, constantly making small changes to that process that they hate. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just let them know that you're following up consistently and that you're doing what you say you're going to do to change that process, so that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And I would also say maybe helping people understand the cost of changing that process, that might be a way for them to be more empathetic and willing to do what they don't want to do. And what I mean by that is, there could be something very silly. I'll use an example from Rally. There is a word that we use in Rally that people wanted to change for a long, long, long time. It's the word project. It's just a word, right? And and customers would come to us and say, why can't you just change this word? And that word was being utilized in a couple different ways. I'm not going to get into the architecture and infrastructure, but we sat them down, we walked them through what it would cost to make that change, and how long it would take us offline to make that change, and how much the customers would have to forego and they wouldn't get if we wanted to make this simple change. And they all agreed. They were like, okay, now that we understand, we'll just leave the word the way it is. I think that can also be used for processes as well, to say, you are valuable. You're very valuable. I value you as a person. I know you're doing this process that you don't like, but take a look at what it would cost to change this process. Take a look at the effort and maybe the heartache that would, it would bring about other people to make this thing. In order to do that, you have to learn a little bit about that process, right? And so, maybe you find ways to change it, but if you still can't change it, at least you're able to communicate the true cost and the impact of making this little change. And sometimes that's enough for people to, let it go and say, you're right. You're right. I don't think that we should take our entire system offline and for, this change this compliance thing.
It's also nice for people to know that their opinions are being valued and their input is being valued as well.
Yeah, I think that matters. Now, the beautiful thing about Agile is that it works, right? And I encourage you to test me on this, right? The great thing about it is it works regardless of you believe me or not. I shouldn't put it that way. Agile works regardless if I believe it or not, right? And so I encourage you to maybe try little things. Try thinking about responding instead of reacting. Try being more clear about your purpose. And see if that impacts people's happiness at all. See if stronger relationships are being built. And when stronger relationships are being built, just pay attention to, how people are. And I would say that there are a lot of managers out there who kind of have their own way of being in tune with their employees, and they kind of know if their employees are happier or sadder. So try something like that and just be honest with yourself and say, is this moving the needle at all? I will be the first person. I will be the first. Yeah, I would be completely okay with you saying, you know what, I gave this an honest try. It doesn't work for me. Let's move on to something else. Right? I think that having that line of thought is very agile.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Longda. Thanks for presenting on this really thoughtful topic. And thank you to everyone who took the time to join us on this webcast today and for all your questions that you sent through. Remember, if we didn't get to your question live on the webcast today, don't worry, we will follow up offline in an email answering your question. But I guess one last thing, how can people get in touch with you?
Right. You should, so the cool thing about, I'm going to go back to the very first slide. If I can do that in a way that's not.
Perfect.
Yeah. If you type in my name on Google, you will find me. Turns out there's very few people who are named Longda Yin. You can find me on LinkedIn. Longda.yin@ca.com is a great way for you to find me on email. And other ways on the community as well?
Yep, on the Agile Central community, we will have this webcast replay and the presentation uploaded. So if you just go to the CA Agile Central communities, we have a big webcast icon on the front page. And you'll not only get to see the replay of this webcast, but also ones that we've conducted in the past, and you can also get a sneak peek on topics that we're going to feature in future months. So with that, please be sure to share the word with your colleagues and friends about this webcast series. We will be posting more topics for upcoming months in the future. But until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.